All right, Stan, so I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week, and no major surprises. It's been a pretty regular set of cast of characters on the top 10 lately. However, port 8545 did jump up into the top 5 spot, and it was way down in 174. We've talked about this port before, and we've got a chart on it that we'll talk about in a second. It's actually not as bad as it looks, even though it's gone all the way up 169 positions. So in terms of the most sources probing, when these are usually more indicative of botnet-related activities because you can get a whole bunch of sources doing the same type of scanning simultaneously. Web, port 8080, we are going to take a look at this. Even though it's only come up 4 positions since last week, there's actually a little bit of a change in movement here that we might want to take a closer look at. So let's take a look at port 8545 TCP. This is related to Ethereum. And I guess it was back in 2015, so it's been a couple of years now. There was a security vulnerability in this G-ETH wallet that listens on port 8545. And I guess some people had their devices, computers, exposed to the internet with that port 8545 exposed. Somebody figured out a vulnerability, and they went and they started stealing money from people's Ethereum wallets. It's not funny. And Ethereum is another one of those cryptocurrencies that we've talked about. It's similar to Bitcoin and Monero and some of these other types of cryptocurrencies, but it's very popular nowadays. So there's not a lot of scan sources involved. It's only about 5 to 10 sources per hour we're actually seeing doing this. But the reason it actually jumped up so much is because when we do our kind of measurements here, we're looking at, yesterday, actually look at yesterday, get a whole day, versus exactly a week ago. And when you look, exactly a week ago is this real divot where it stopped for some reason, and then it's since gone back up. So it looks like a big change. But in reality, it kind of, since there aren't a lot of sources doing this, it kind of stops and starts. And that's why we can see it, drop off the top 10 list, but then come right back up again when they do start scanning on it heavily.
So it's probably not a botnet or anything like that, just a few industrious people
that's what I would think.
Looking to steal money.
Yeah, because not a whole lot of scan sources involved here. So then the next one we had was port 8080 TCP.
8080 TCP? It looks like maybe there's a new botnet developing, or possibly it's been around, but it just became interested in port 8080 TCP.
Port 8080 TCP, there's a significant increase in scanning activity in terms of the number of scan sources. This is a 1-year chart I'm showing here. We always see scanning on this port because there's a lot of services running on this port. It's commonly used, even though it's the alternate HTTP port. But recently here, within the past week or so, it's really climbed up. So we went from, let's say maybe a peak between the 4,000 to 5,000 scan sources per hour, back in here. We've jumped all the way up to about 16,000 to 18,000 scan sources per hour. So that's a pretty significant, it's like a 3-fold jump or more. All of a sudden, within the past week or so here, it's gone up to about 15,000 to 17,000 scan sources per hour, and very quickly. So that sharp incline rise, very botnet-like looking. You can kind of see it spiked really quickly, and then it has this decay, that sawtooth waveform, which is usually really indicative of botnet-related activity, because they all start at once. The fast ones finish quicker. The slower ones take a little more time, and you get this kind of sawtooth waveform that shows up. Sources are distributed pretty widely geographically. There's no particular type of device I see involved here, but I didn't take a really hard look. I was just kind of looking at the geographic distribution.
That's a pretty interesting one. I guess there's a new botnet forming.
Yeah, there's something going on here for it to jump to that level. When you look at a 1-year chart, you can see it's never really been that high over the past year. So
I guess I know what I'm doing when I get back to my desk.
Well, yeah, we could take a closer look and try to figure out if there's a specific botnet relatedness. And you'd probably be a good chance to be able to determine that. And then lastly, this one's a pretty obvious something's up, something is afoot, right? So this is a 30-day chart, and over the past 30 days, we really had minimal to no scanning activity on this port 5555 TCP. It's actually related to a service port for Android. And actually these numbers are right around, let's say, it looks like it's almost about 5,000. So right in here is that 5,000 scan sources per hour, upwards of 7,000 maybe at the top end. And this just started around February 3rd or 4th, I'm going to say. There was an article came out, I think you were going to talk about this as well on the show, that there's a new botnet forming by this Android debug bridge that listens on port 5555 TCP, and I guess some devices have that open.
It was interesting to see that with our tools as well, we were able to correlate the same findings or similar findings as other security researchers out there. So we were also able to see between 5,000 to 7,000 unique devices.
That's probably what's attributing to this quick rise in scanning on that port. And other interesting thing is this article says about 5,000 Android devices, which lines up almost exactly with what we're seeing. So that's a pretty good metric that we're seeing about the same exact numbers as they are.
Yes, it did come up kind of quickly too. You could see it right on this day, boom,
right,
and all those devices. It probably is a very good exploit.
Yeah, it probably is a very easy exploit to execute. It looks like it's kind of wavering and maybe kind of trailing down, but I guess we'll see over the next couple of weeks how it looks.
I guess once they get discovered in a big way, it seems like security researchers and other people start taking action, so it starts tapering down.
And that's all we had for this week.